It is a promise about your very being, about my very being. It's one of our foundational identity realities. It's a promise about our very being. In this Epiphany season, we've been on a journey of asking, who are you? Who are you, Jesus? And in answering that question, we learn who we are and whose we are. We started this journey, and if you're visiting with us today, I'm going to catch you all up, yeah? So you can jump in with us. We started the beginning of the year with remembering our baptismal vows. If you were baptized as a baby, if you were baptized somewhere in between, or if you've not been baptized, it's still true. Yet in baptism, it's that moment when we claim our belovedness. When we name the reality that we've been claimed by God as beloved sons and daughters with whom God is well pleased. That's our first identity reality. It's an affirmation of who we are and whose we are. We've all been given other names along the way, yes? Cynthia, goddess of the moon. You probably have yours as well, for my delighted, I'm sure, Christian parents to learn about that. But yes, but along the way, we hear other names that might not be as affirming. So that's why we lean into our belovedness. Last week we heard about the Beatitudes. Jesus on this mountain is given a sermon in the Gospel of Matthew. Jesus is teacher, Jesus is preacher. And he begins to bless people whom the world would rather forget. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are those who mourn. Blessed are the refugees. Blessed are the moral resistors. Blessed are those who are riddled with anxiety and fear and still reach out for help and to help. Blessed are the LGBTQ community and their allies. Blessed are those whose health care is in jeopardy. Blessed are the National Park Service employees and those who stand for truth and justice. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for justice, for that hunger and thirst will be quenched. Blessed are all of us. Are we willing to ask the question, why is it that people are poor in spirit? Why is it that they need to work 2 or 3 jobs and find themselves so exhausted it's difficult to worship their God? Are we willing to ask, why is it that people are mourning our African American sisters who are losing their brothers and their sons at quite a rate? Blessed are you, the people of God. Yes? First identity, we're beloved. Second, we're blessed and God is with us. Third, are y'all still with me? It's a promise about our very being. My very being. You are the salt of the earth. You are the light of the world. Because I knew y'all woke up this morning and you said, that's who I am, right? I'm the light of the world. I am the salt of the earth. I hope y'all did. Because it's true right in this moment. Not you should be, you're working on it. Can't you become a little quicker? No, right in this moment. You are the light of the world. You are the salt of the earth. You already are. Even if you don't know it. Even if you knew it once and you forgot it. Even if you're having a really hard time this morning believing that it could actually be true. Especially in these times in which we live, where it seems like there's some chaos, smoke screens, head fakes about what we should look at or not look at, that attempt to keep us in that constant state of confusion and off kilter. And I need to be clear, I apologize, I have not been clear about this, that you most likely won't hear me responding to every crazy tweet or every nonsensical executive order. We're going to continue to take a big picture, yes. Going to continue to ground ourselves in who we are as a people of God. We're going to continue to talk about what it looks like to build and to weave into the fabric of our society a healthy, functioning democracy. And we're going to continue to be those people of God, tipping it towards God's dream, yes? I'm mindful this morning and heartful as we come back to our basics, as we come back to our foundation of being a people who steep ourselves and marinate ourselves in the reality of us being part of God's unfolding story. That my beloved community, everybody deep breath in. Whew. This is not a sprint, right? This is a marathon. We're in it for the long haul. Tipping towards God's justice and love is a long haul. Y'all with me? So what we're talking about, being the light of the world and salt of the earth, is coming back to our roots for resistance that can be spiritually sustained for the long run. Back to the basics, back to the foundations about our identity of who we are as a people of God, beloved, blessed. We're the salt of the earth. We are the light of the world. Each Sunday we come to remember this. We come to be reminded of who we are as a people of God and whose we are. For memory, Wes Granberg Michelson tells us this. Memory is tied to the identity of the people of God. Continually the people of God, which is us, are reminded of who they are by recounting the sweep of salvation history. And our memory becomes attached to this version of history because our lives find their value and purpose here. Our core liturgical act of Christian community is Eucharist, is communion, which we'll engage in a few minutes. It's a celebration of remembrance. One writer says memory is more than just a psychological exercise of data retrieval. Rather, it's the faculty that tells us who we are. It's through our memory that our personal story becomes attached to God's story. We claim our defining narrative. And in this world in which we live, each time a new administration comes in, throughout their administration, they try to define their narrative. Yes? The world's fallen apart. The world's great. Going to hell in a handbasket. We're on our way to heaven. They try to define their narrative. Yes, we need to be aware of that narrative, and yet we also need to realize that our narrative is one of being God's people. And if that's our foundation, how then do we engage in the narrative that's coming at us in such a way that we can not normalize what's abnormal? That we can be a people continuing to build that vision of abundance, of flourishing for all. So we come to remember, to allow God's story to shape us, beloved, blessed, salt of the earth, light of the world, to shape us and ground us in who we are. So when we hear this, do this in remembrance of me, it's Jesus saying, remember who you are, beloved, blessed, salt, light. And in our passage this morning, Jesus is making promises, and he's giving out gifts, like he did last week. I'm again reminded of when Melissa and her crew danced. And there was that part in their dance. If you're visiting with us, so every once in a while we have a dance. Don't worry, we're not going to ask y'all to do that this morning. But if the Spirit's so moving, yes, that we danced to one of the songs from Godspell. Remind me which one it is. It was a gorgeous one. But halfway through the dance, the dancers were gently throwing out to us these gorgeous balls of love, of God's love, and it was this visual. If you can think of the blessings that Jesus has for us, it's the same thing. It's these blessings that are coming at us. So, you are the salt of the earth. You are the light of the world. It's a sheer blessing. It's about identity, about our very being. When we allow it to go deep enough, that's what leads us into action. And Jesus, who's this master storyteller, he uses these everyday common elements of his people, right? When we think of salt, what do we think of? High blood pressure? Yes? I mean, can we just say that? Yeah, that some of us are watching it. We're probably needing to take some kind of medication for it. So we're aware of that. In Jesus' time, though, it was this really, it was this really important element. It used to be rubbed on newborn children. so that they would be blessed. It was sealed covenants. It was sprinkled on sacrifices. It was understood as a metaphor for wisdom. And it became associated with God's gracious activity, salt. And I know y'all didn't come for a science lesson because, like I said, many of us are watching our sodium intake, our blood pressure, our diabetes. So we have to be careful of it. And yet, let's play with it for a few moments, yeah? Light and salt. What does it mean? These metaphors. If I actually am salt of the earth, if you are salt of the earth, what does that look like in how we live it out? I think I've shared with you all before that I make a rather delicious guacamole. Have I shared that with you? Did I make a really delicious guacamole? Have I, yes? And there's some key ingredients in the way I make guacamole, and I'm sure you have one as well. We should do that, yeah? A chili feed and then a guacamole, yeah? All right, we have some head nods. Look at that with some Minnesotan head nods. Awesome. All right, so here are the ingredients that you need. You need some, and I use organic. It's okay if you don't use organic. I was watching, I'm not going to, it's like the pause when my son asked us about Emily and driving, right? There's a whole story that goes with that. And my pause is my conviction that I had last night watching an amazing comedian talk about organic foods and how that is tied into economic privilege. So that's my pause this morning. And one time we need to unpack that together. And in the moment, let's go with my delicious guacamole. Yes? Haas organic avocados, the ones from California. I'm very aware that California is in a severe drought. I'm very aware that the people who may bring my delicious avocados to me in Minnesota might be an undocumented worker. I'm very aware that it takes quite a bit of gas for the truckers. They used to just go from California up to Washington to get to me, but now they come all the way to Minnesota, which is such a great place to live, isn't it? So I'm aware when we talk about something as simple as avocados, we're all connected, aren't we? There's some interdependency in a web and some economics as well. Next ingredient is the organic red onions, organic garlic, and then some organic cilantro. You squish it, you mush it all together, chop it, put it all together. Yet the first time I made it, something was missing. Didn't have much flavor, and then I put in some salt. It popped. Salt enhances flavor. It takes these diversity of ingredients and it brings them together. If we are salt of the earth, what does it look like for us to be people who bring other people together? Takes the diversities of what are and brings them together towards a common goal. Whether that's a thriving democracy or God's dream or the kingdom of God, or maybe it's a project at work. How are you one of those salt of the earth people who can take the diversity of opinions and bring them together in a way that makes this deliciousness, not just for a few, but everyone? Second way that we're salt of the earth. It implies, right, that we're bringing flavor to our relationships. Because salts can have an edge as well. We need to be a people who keep salt in wounds. There are wounds in our society. Racism, homophobia, Islamophobia, white supremacy. And these, as you all know, are a spiritual disease. They're many things. But if we look at the core of all of those isms, it's a spiritual disease. Certain bodies are more important than other bodies. Certain bodies have more value than other bodies. Certain bodies matter more than other bodies. It's a spiritual disease. But all bodies are beloved and blessed and salt and light. So we need to be, at certain times, that salt in those wounds to keep in front of us that those wounds are still real. That salt allows us to be people who resist, who keep that abnormal in front of us and refuse to normalize it, to see the suffering that happens in those wounds, and then become those people who bring others together. There are times when we need to resist and be salt in wounds to bring about, hopefully, redemptive healing. All right, yes? Bringing diversity together, that type of salt. Second, sometimes we need to be some salt in the wounds and resist. Third, salt, as you know, living here in Minnesota, and this is a new learning for me. And those of you visiting, my family and I moved here from Seattle, and we've been here about a year and 5 months now. So this is new, that salt, you know when the ice comes? Because it would snow in Seattle. It would snow, the city would shut down for a day or two. We'd have popcorn and hot chocolate. We'd all sled, and then it would melt, right? But here, it's still here. The snow and the ice. But salt, and I'm sure it's mixed with something, so y'all please enlighten me along the way, yes, has that potential to melt something that seems hard and immovable, impenetrable. Salt has the ability to transform something hard, like a hardened heart, a cynical heart, a shut down heart. Salt has the ability to break it open and transform it into something new, liquid. It's the same with God. When we are that salt, when we allow God to work through us, we have that possibility to melt things that seemed hardened and stuck. We help transform it by being salt of the earth. Y'all still with me? Salt. So maybe salt, y'all, maybe not quite resonating with you. That's okay. We're going to shift to light, yes? Or maybe it is, and you get to have a bonus with light too, yes? So you not only are the salt of the earth, you're also the light of the world. As I've mentioned before, I know you all go to some jobs where you're not seen, where that light gets kicked around and diminished. It's one of the reasons why we come here to remember that we are light. Because God's light is within each of us. And we're called to let it shine. Marianne Williamson puts it best. She says this: our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. I must say that one more time. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, and fabulous? Actually, who you're not to be. You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There's nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us. It's in every one. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. You are the light of the world. You are the light of the world. And I know, we Minnesotans, it's kind of nice to be able to include myself in that. Have I passed yet being here a year and 4 months? We get a little uncomfortable. We don't want to make anybody uncomfortable. Yet in these times in which we live, we need to be those people who shine our lights brightly. So this is another blessing, and I'll wrap it up. An identity statement. And as Miss Nicole read that scripture, the edginess and accountability-ness of Jesus came out. Because the question is, how do we keep ourselves salty? How do we keep our lights bright and flourishing? Jesus says when you lose your saltiness, it gets thrown out and trampled on. There's some accountability there. What news sources, activities, spiritual practices are you engaging in these times in which we live when there's so much coming at us to keep your saltiness and your light alive and well? we need to be clear that there are forces at play that are trying to snuff out our lights, that are trying to diminish our saltiness. So we need to be a people who come and linger here, who come and linger in our belovedness, in our blessedness, in this identity reality, that we too are people who are the salt of the earth and the light of the world. Once we allow that to linger, then it can lead to action. So may we, O God, be a people who commit ourselves to calling that forth, saltiness and light. Because we know when we are salt and light, God is using us. God is using me to change our world for the good and for the better. May it be so. Amen. World.